praise. The Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit thou womb choosest. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death.
Testing 1 2 3 testing. Hello. 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 Testing 1 2 3 testing. Hello. 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 My beloved child, listen to these words as if they were carried to you by the same wind that parted the Red Sea. I have journeyed across the sands of time to meet you in this sacred moment, where our paths intersect like the two roads to Emmaus. This is not mere happenstance, it is divine appointment. For I am always seeking those who search for their true purpose, just as I once told you. Seek, and you shall find. Have you observed the sparrows that I tend to with such care? Before they take flight, there is a moment of perfect stillness, a holy pause that contains all the wisdom of creation. In that brief instant, the bird does not question its wings. It simply acknowledges the vastness of the sky it is about to embrace. You too stand at such a threshold now. The treasure of self-confidence you seek, that seems as distant as Canaan appeared to Moses, has never truly been lost. It has dwelled within you since I formed you in your mother's womb, waiting patiently like the mustard seed that holds the promise of a mighty tree. Today, we will unearth this hidden treasure together. In the ancient language of the prophets, there is no word for doubt. There is only the eternal conversation between what your heart knows to be true, where my spirit dwells, and what your mind fears might be false. When these voices speak in discord, you feel that familiar ache of uncertainty, the one that kept even David awake composing psalms when Jerusalem slept. Consider the cedar of Lebanon that grows from the mountain's rocky soil. It does not question whether it should reach for the heavens. It simply grows, transforming obstacles into strength. Its roots do not ask permission to deepen. They penetrate the earth with the same quiet determination I showed in the Garden of Gethsemane. This wisdom is not learned, it is remembered. And so it is with you. I have watched you study the footsteps of others, believing their path might be safer than the one I have called you to walk. You gather opinions around you like the Israelites collected manna, hoping their combined weight will somehow guide your decisions. But have you noticed how even with hands full of others' certainties, your spirit remains hungry? This hunger is sacred. It is my voice calling you home to yourself. Remember the moments when you trusted the voice within, even if they were as brief as Peter's steps upon the water. Think of how the impossible became possible, how pathways opened before you like the sea before Moses. These were not coincidences, but glimpses of what happens when you align with my purpose for your life. The refiner knows that to purify silver, it must pass through fire. Before any external transformation can manifest, there must be an internal revolution. A moment when you recognize that trusting yourself is not an act of pride, but an act of profound faith in my craftsmanship. Today, I offer you not just words, but a mirror in which you might see your reflection as I see you, perhaps for the first time since you were a child. In this reflection, you will discover that self-trust is not something you attain, but something you unveil, like removing the stone from the tomb to reveal the life that was always present. If these words resonate in the chambers of your heart like the shofar's call, I urge you to share them with another soul who stands at their own Jordan River, hesitant to cross. Sometimes the greatest gift you can offer another is the courage to trust the voice I have placed within them. Do not merely listen to this message and then walk away. Become part of this sacred community of seekers. Subscribe to this channel now, for it is through these messages that I will continue to guide you toward the promised land of your true potential. Press the button below as an act of commitment to your journey. Not tomorrow, but this very moment. Then leave the words, "I am following my star," in the comments below, and witness how this declaration begins to illuminate your path. My beloved pilgrim, the journey of self-trust is walked one step at a time, often by the light of faith rather than sight. But know this, I walk beside you, just as I promised to be with you always, even unto the end of the age. I have seen how you tremble before making choices, like Moses at the burning bush, questioning whether you are worthy to carry my message. You wonder if the voice guiding you is truly mine, or merely an echo of your own desires. Let me tell you now what I told Jeremiah. Before you were formed in the womb, I knew you. The confidence you seek is not something foreign to your nature, but the very essence of who I created you to be. Think of the woman who had bled for 12 years and pressed through the crowd just to touch the hem of my garment. What courage it took for her to believe that she was worthy of healing. The same courage resides in you. When she touched my robe, I felt power flow from me, and she felt it enter her body like a river of light. This is what happens when you trust the wisdom I have placed within you. My power flows from heaven to earth, using your faith as its conduit. When I multiplied the loaves and fishes, I first looked to heaven in gratitude. You too must look beyond your apparent limitations before any miracle can manifest in your life. It is not the size of your resources that matters, but your willingness to offer them in trust. 5 loaves or 5 talents. What appears insufficient in the world's eyes becomes abundant when surrendered with confidence in my divine plan for your life. The merchants in the temple had forgotten the sacred purpose of their existence, trading divine connection for worldly gain. Many of you have done the same with your self-trust, trading it for the false security of others' opinions. But just as I overturned those tables with righteous purpose, you must now overturn the tables where you have sold your birthright for a bowl of porridge, the temporary comfort of external validation. Remember how I calmed the storm on the Sea of Galilee? The disciples woke me in panic, believing they would perish despite my presence in their boat. How often have you done the same, forgetting that I dwell within you even as the storms of doubt rage around you? The peace that silenced those waters is the same peace that awaits when you trust the divine spark I have placed within your heart. My child, there is a wilderness that many wander through, not of sand and stone like the Israelites faced for 40 years, but a desert within. I see you there now, walking circles in this barren landscape of self-doubt, where the sun of certainty seems always to set too quickly, leaving you in darkness. This wilderness manifests in your life in countless ways. Like Gideon threshing wheat in a winepress, hiding his work out of fear, you too shrink from fully expressing your gifts. You speak softly in gatherings when wisdom burns within you. You hesitate to step into new territories when I have already promised they are yours to claim. You remain in Egypt when Canaan awaits because the familiar chains sometimes feel safer than unfamiliar freedom. The absence of self-trust is like the absence of water in the desert. It affects everything. Every decision becomes a burden rather than a blessing. You second-guess the manna I provide each morning, wondering if it is truly enough. You look toward the horizon with Moses' longing but Aaron's doubt, both desiring and fearing the promised land of your potential. Many who walk this wilderness seek water from broken cisterns, as Jeremiah lamented. You search for validation from others, measuring your worth through their eyes rather than through mine. These external opinions become like mirages. They appear to quench your thirst momentarily, but leave you more parched than before. One day someone praises your work, and you walk taller. The next day, criticism comes, and you collapse inward like the walls of Jericho at the trumpet's blast. Do you recognize how this pattern has shaped your journey? When Peter took his eyes off me and fixed them on the storm, he began to sink immediately. So too do you falter when you shift your focus from the divine purpose I have sown into the fabric of your being to the swirling opinions and ever-changing standards of the world. There is a deeper consequence to this lack of self-trust that few recognize. When you doubt the vessel I have crafted with such care, you inadvertently doubt the potter's hands. Woe to those who quarrel with their maker, Isaiah warned. Those who are nothing but potsherds among the potsherds on the ground. Does the clay say to the potter, "What are you making?" Each time you question your inherent worth, you question my wisdom in creating you exactly as you are. The enemy walks through this wilderness like a lion seeking whom he may devour, as Peter cautioned. He whispers that your doubts are wisdom, that your hesitation is humility, that your self-criticism is righteous self-examination. Do not be deceived. The voice that tells you that you are not enough has never been mine. From the very beginning, when I formed creation and called it good, I have spoken blessing, not cursing, over all that I have made, including you. Remember the rich young ruler, who came to me seeking eternal life? He had followed all the commandments from his youth, yet something essential was missing. When I told him to sell his possessions, it was not his gold that stood between him and abundance. It was his inability to trust that he would be enough without the identity his wealth provided. How many treasures have you left unclaimed, because you did not trust yourself to steward them properly? Even my closest disciples struggled with this wilderness. Thomas needed to place his fingers in my wounds before he would believe. Martha needed to busy herself with preparations rather than trust that sitting at my feet was enough. These stories are not in Scripture to condemn but to comfort, to show you that the struggle to trust is as old as humanity itself, yet never beyond redemption. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding, Solomon advised. Yet many have misinterpreted this wisdom, believing it means to disconnect from their own inner knowing. True trust in me includes trusting the intuition I have placed within you, that still, small voice that speaks with the same authority as the burning bush. If only you would remove your sandals and listen on holy ground. I ask you now to pause this video and reflect. Where in your life has self-doubt become so familiar that you no longer recognize it as a visitor rather than the homeowner? Write this down, acknowledging the specific territories where the wilderness has claimed too much of your promised land. Then, I urge you with the same urgency with which I called Lazarus from the tomb. Subscribe to this channel now. Press the button as an act of faith, a declaration that you are ready to leave the wilderness behind. Each message I send through this vessel is like manna for your journey. Daily bread that will sustain you until you reach the land flowing with milk and honey that is your birthright. Share this message with another soul wandering in their own wilderness. Comment below with the words, "I am leaving the wilderness," as a testimony that will inspire others to follow the pillar of fire toward their own liberation. My precious one, identifying where you have lost trust in yourself is the first step toward reclaiming the garden that was always meant to grow where the desert now stands. The wilderness is not your home. It is merely the passage between slavery and sovereignty. My beloved, the journey from the wilderness of doubt to the garden of confidence begins with understanding that self-trust is not merely a human virtue, but a divine inheritance. In the beginning, when I spoke the universe into existence, I did not question whether my words would manifest as reality. I simply spoke, and it was so. This same creative power flows through you, for you are made in my image and likeness. The first principle of self-trust is to recognize the echo of my voice in your own. Think of Abraham, who left the familiar comfort of you are without knowing his destination. All he carried was a promise and the courage to believe it. When I called him to journey to a land he had never seen, he did not form a committee to validate my instructions. He did not seek second opinions or waste precious time in hesitation. He simply gathered his household and began walking. This is the essence of divine self-trust, the ability to hear the whisper of purpose and honor it with immediate action. There is wisdom in understanding that self-trust is not something you create, but something you remove obstacles from, like David clearing stones from his path before facing Goliath. What stands between you and complete confidence in your divine design? Is it the pebble of past failure? The boulder of others' expectations? The mountain of fear? Each of these obstacles appears insurmountable only until you recognize that they are not fixed parts of the landscape, but movable features you have allowed to block your path. Consider how Moses initially responded when I spoke to him from the burning bush. Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? His question revealed not humility, but a forgetting of who stood behind him. When you doubt yourself, you are not exercising prudence. You are forgetting whose breath animates your being. I did not give Moses a detailed explanation of his qualifications for the task ahead. I simply said, I will be with you. This is the second principle of self-trust, remembering that I am with you always, lending divine authority to your steps. The Psalms speak of being fearfully and wonderfully made. Ponder these words like precious stones in your palm. To be fearfully made means to be created with such precise care that even the hairs on your head are numbered. To be wonderfully made means to be filled with marvels that have yet to be fully discovered. When David penned these words, he was not engaging in hollow self-flattery, but in profound spiritual recognition. This is the third principle. Trusting yourself is an act of sacred appreciation for my craftsmanship. Joseph's journey from the pit to the palace reveals another dimension of self-trust. When falsely accused and imprisoned, he did not abandon his gift of dream interpretation out of bitterness or fear of further rejection. Even in the darkest dungeon, he continued to use his divine gift, trusting that the seed planted within him would bear fruit in due season. This is the fourth principle. True self-trust persists through seasons of darkness, neither diminished by hardship nor inflated by success. Consider Queen Esther, who faced the prospect of approaching the king uninvited, an act punishable by death. When her uncle Mordecai suggested that she had come to the kingdom for such a time as this, she embraced her divine appointment despite her fear. She recognized that destiny and danger often arrive holding hands. This is the fifth principle. Authentic self-trust acknowledges fear without allowing it to hold the final vote in your decisions. The prophet Jeremiah provides us with perhaps the most beautiful image of divine confidence. Blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord, whose confidence is in him. They will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes, its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought and never fails to bear fruit. Notice that the tree does not trust in its own strength, but in its connection to the living water. So it is with divine self-trust. Your confidence flows not from inflated self-importance, but from your unbroken connection to me, the source of all life. When the angel appeared to Mary with news that would forever alter her life's course, her response reveals the sixth principle of self-trust. Let it be to me according to your word. She did not demand exhaustive explanations or guarantees of comfort. She simply opened herself to divine possibility, trusting that her vessel was worthy of carrying something miraculous. How often have you disqualified yourself from greatness before even allowing the possibility to take root? Mary's self-trust was not in her own abilities, but in the divine potential that awakens when one simply says yes. The Apostle Paul, once blinded on the Damascus road, had to surrender his previous understanding to embrace a new identity. In his letter to the Philippians, he shared the seventh principle. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Notice he did not say some things or easy things, but all things. Self-trust grounded in me knows no limitation, because it draws from an eternal wellspring rather than a human reservoir. I ask you now to reach for a pen and paper. Write down these 7 principles of divine self-trust, not as concepts to be studied, but as seeds to be planted in the garden of your daily practice. As you write each one, speak it aloud, allowing its truth to travel from your mind to your lips to your heart. This simple act of writing and speaking is itself an exercise in self-trust, a declaration that you are worthy of receiving divine wisdom. Now, with the same conviction with which Joshua commanded the sun to stand still, I urge you, subscribe to this channel of divine guidance. Press the button not as a casual gesture, but as a covenant, a commitment to nurturing these seeds of self-trust until they grow into mighty cedars of Lebanon in your life. Share this message with 3 people who you know are wandering in their own wilderness of doubt. Comment below with the words, I am rooted in divine confidence, as a declaration that will begin to reorder your reality from this moment forward. My precious child, understanding these principles is merely the beginning. Like manna in the desert, this wisdom must be gathered fresh each morning and integrated into the very fiber of your being. In the days ahead, return to these words as often as the Israelites returned to the pillar of fire that guided them through unfamiliar terrain. The light you seek has always been within you, waiting only for your permission to shine. My child, understanding the principles of self-trust is like receiving seeds of promise, but applying these principles is how you plant them in the soil of your everyday existence. Just as I told my disciples that faith without works is dead, so too is knowledge without application merely a ghost of transformation, a shadow without substance. Let me now show you how to weave these golden threads of trust into the tapestry of your ordinary moments. Begin each morning as David did, with a psalm in your heart. Before your feet touch the floor, before the world rushes in with its demands and distractions, declare to yourself, "This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it." This simple practice creates a foundation of trust upon which all other actions can be built. When you acknowledge that the day itself is my gift to you, you honor both the giver and the recipient, yourself, my beloved creation. Notice how the lilies of the field neither toil nor spin, yet they are clothed more gloriously than Solomon in all his splendor. They do not question whether they are worthy of the sun's attention or the rain's nourishment. They simply turn their faces toward the light and receive. Practice this lily wisdom by standing before the mirror each morning and receiving your reflection without criticism. Look into your own eyes as I look at you, with perfect love that casts out fear. Say aloud, "I am fearfully and wonderfully made. My worthiness is not earned but inherent." When Moses faced the seemingly impossible task of leading the Israelites through the wilderness, he did not carry the burden alone. He appointed judges and delegated authority, recognizing that self-trust includes acknowledging your limitations. In your daily life, practice the art of sacred delegation. Ask yourself, is this task truly mine to carry, or am I refusing help out of pride or fear? Sometimes the most profound act of self-trust is admitting that you need the gifts of others to complete what I have started in you. Consider how I sent my disciples out 2 by 2, not because they were insufficient alone, but because purpose is often best fulfilled in community. Surround yourself with those who water the seeds of your confidence, rather than those who salt the earth of your potential. When making decisions, consult trusted voices, but remember the counsel of Proverbs. The way of a fool is right in his own eyes, but a wise man listens to advice. True self-trust is not isolation from others' wisdom, but integration of it with your own inner knowing. Joshua commanded the Israelites to place stones of remembrance after crossing the Jordan River, physical reminders of divine faithfulness. Create your own stones of remembrance by documenting moments when your trust in yourself aligned with divine purpose and produced fruit. Keep a journal where you record not just your struggles but your victories. Times when you honored the whisper of your soul and found me waiting on the other side of obedience. During his imprisonment, Paul wrote letters of encouragement to struggling communities of faith. His example teaches us that self-trust flows outward as generosity. Each day, find someone to encourage. Speak words of life over another's potential, not as flattery but as prophecy, calling forth what you can see but they may have forgotten. When you trust yourself enough to build others up, you create a current of confidence that returns to you multiplied. When King David danced before the Ark of the Covenant with abandoned joy, his wife Michal despised him in her heart for what she perceived as undignified behavior. Yet David refused to allow her criticism to diminish his authentic expression. Practice this royal courage by identifying one area where you have silenced your true voice out of fear of judgment. Perhaps it is in how you dress, how you speak, or how you create. Choose to trust your authentic expression this very day, remembering that the opinions of others are merely clouds passing across the eternal sky of your divine purpose. The prophet Elijah, after his triumph on Mount Carmel, fled into the wilderness when threatened by Jezebel. There, in his exhaustion and despair, I spoke to him not in earthquake, wind, or fire, but in a still, small voice. Learn from Elijah to create daily spaces of silence where you can hear your own inner wisdom. This may be through meditation, prayer, walking in nature, or simply sitting with your own thoughts without the constant noise of technology. Self-trust flourishes in silence, for it is there that the voice of fear is finally quiet enough for truth to be heard. When Ruth followed her mother-in-law to a strange land, she said, "Where you go, I will go." This same commitment must exist between your present and future self. Practice making promises to yourself and keeping them, no matter how small. Begin with manageable commitments. I will drink water before noon, or I will read for 15 minutes before sleep. When you prove trustworthy in small things, you build the muscle of self-trust that can later lift heavier weights of purpose. At the wedding in Cana, when the wine ran out, my mother simply stated the problem and then told the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Notice that she did not try to solve the problem herself or dictate the solution. She identified the need and then trusted completely in the response. Practice this discernment between what is yours to name and what is yours to solve. Many of the burdens you carry were never meant for your shoulders. Self-trust includes knowing when to act and when to surrender. In the Garden of Gethsemane, I prayed, "Not my will, but yours be done." This prayer reveals the deepest mystery of divine self-trust. That true confidence is found not in asserting you're separate, but in aligning with the current of divine purpose that runs through your life like an underground river. Each day, ask yourself, am I swimming against the current of my true nature, or am I allowing myself to be carried by something larger than my fears? Trust in the direction of the river, even when you cannot see around the next bend. I call to you now with the same urgency with which I called to Lazarus in his tomb. Subscribe to this channel today. Just as Lazarus needed to hear my voice to awaken to new life, you need consistent reminders of your divine nature to fully embody the self-trust that is your birthright. Press the subscription button as a declaration that you are committed to unwrapping the grave clothes of doubt that have kept you bound. Share this message with 7 people whose light you see dimmed by the shadows of self-doubt. Comment below with the words, "I am practicing divine self-trust daily," as a covenant between us that you will apply these principles not just in theory, but in the laboratory of your everyday life. My precious one, the application of self-trust is not a distant destination, but a daily pilgrimage. A sacred walk from who you have believed yourself to be to who I have always known you are. Just as the Israelites gathered manna one day at a time, gather these practices into your life moment by moment, trusting that what seems insufficient for tomorrow is perfectly abundant for today. My beloved, the principles of self-trust are not merely beautiful concepts floating like clouds across the sky of possibility. They are seeds that, when planted in the soil of faithful practice, grow into forests of transformation. Let me share with you the stories of those who have walked this path before you, for in their journeys you will recognize fragments of your own. Consider the story of Peter, the fisherman whose life was defined by the familiar rhythms of nets and tides. When I first called him to follow me, he hesitated only briefly before stepping out of his boat, his livelihood, his identity, his security. This single act of self-trust led him from being a simple fisherman to becoming a fisher of men, a pillar of my church. There were moments when his confidence faltered, most notably when he denied me 3 times before the rooster crowed. Yet even in his failure, the seed of trust remained alive. After my resurrection, when I asked him 3 times if he loved me, his affirmative response was not just a pledge of devotion, but a renewal of trust in his own capacity to fulfill his calling despite past stumbles. Today, Peter would tell you, the waves that once terrified me became the very path on which I learned to walk with divine confidence. Remember the Samaritan woman who met me at Jacob's well? Her life had been shaped by shame and rejection. 5 husbands had defined her worth through abandonment, and her community had reduced her to whispers and sidelong glances. When I spoke to her, offering living water, I was inviting her not just to a new spiritual understanding, but to a revolutionary self-trust. After our conversation, she ran back to the very town that had marginalized her and boldly proclaimed what she had experienced. Her testimony was so compelling that many Samaritans came to believe because of her words. This woman, who once drew water at noon to avoid the judgment of others, found herself standing in the town square, trusting her voice to carry truth. Now she would tell you, the vessel I once believed was broken beyond repair became the very cup from which others drank liberation. Consider Mary Magdalene, from whom I cast out 7 demons. The number 7 in Hebrew understanding represents completeness. Her oppression was total, her suffering complete. Yet after experiencing freedom, she became one of my most devoted followers, supporting my ministry from her own resources. When others fled during my crucifixion, she remained. When hope seemed buried with me in the tomb, she came at dawn to perform one final act of devotion. It was to her, this woman once thought possessed, that I entrusted the first announcement of my resurrection. Her journey from complete bondage to becoming the apostle to the apostles demonstrates how divine self-trust can transform even the most shattered vessel into a bearer of world-changing news. Today, Mary would tell you, the voice that demons once used to speak fear over my life became the very instrument through which I proclaimed resurrection. Think of the centurion who approached me about his paralyzed servant. As a Roman military leader, he understood authority and chain of command. What made his request extraordinary was not just his compassion for his servant, but his complete conviction that my authority operated like his own, that I could simply speak the word and healing would occur. Unlike others who begged me to come in person, he trusted both my power and his own understanding of how that power worked. "Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof," he said, But just say the word, and my servant will be healed. His self-trust and his spiritual discernment was so remarkable that I marveled, and said I had not found such great faith even in Israel. This centurion would tell you today, the moment I trusted my own understanding of divine authority was the moment healing flowed into my household. Remember the hemorrhaging woman who had suffered for 12 years, spending all she had on physicians who could not help her. Society had deemed her perpetually unclean, untouchable. Yet something within her, a divine spark of self-trust, led her to push through the crowd, believing that merely touching the hem of my garment would heal her. Think of the courage this required. To trust her own conviction enough to risk public shame, to believe her understanding of faith was correct even when religion had labeled her an outsider. The moment she touched my robe and felt healing course through her body was not just a physical restoration, but a vindication of her self-trust. I did not let her remain anonymous, but called her forward to confirm publicly what she already knew internally, that her faith had made her well. Today she would tell you, the hand that society taught me to hide became the very instrument of my healing when I trusted enough to reach out. Consider the story of Joseph, sold into slavery by his own brothers, falsely accused and imprisoned in a foreign land. Throughout years of seemingly senseless suffering, he maintained trust not just in divine purpose, but in his own gifts. When presented with the opportunity to interpret Pharaoh's dreams, he did not downplay his abilities or defer to others. He stepped forward with quiet confidence, trusting that the interpretation he received was valid despite his status as a prisoner. This self-trust, combined with divine guidance, elevated him to become second only to Pharaoh in all of Egypt. When famine later brought his brothers to bow before him, he did not use his position for revenge, but for reconciliation, trusting his own capacity for compassion rather than yielding to bitterness. Joseph would tell you today, the dream that made my brothers mock me became the very vision that saved them when I trusted its fulfillment through me. Think of Rahab, a woman whose profession had placed her on the margins of society. When the Israelite spies came to Jericho, she made a split-second decision to hide them, trusting her own moral compass over loyalty to a doomed city. More remarkably, she negotiated for her family's safety, presenting her terms with the confidence of a diplomat rather than the hesitation of a social outcast. Her scarlet cord hanging from her window was a public declaration of where she had placed her trust, not in Jericho's seemingly impenetrable walls, but in her own judgment about which side would ultimately prevail. Her self-trust quite literally saved her life and secured her a place in the lineage of David, and ultimately, in my own human ancestry. Today, Rahab would tell you, the thread that once symbolized my shame became the very rope of my rescue when I trusted enough to hang it boldly from my window. Remember Matthew, the tax collector whom religious society had written off as a traitor and sinner. When I called him from his tax booth, he immediately left everything to follow me. This required tremendous self-trust, to believe that despite society's condemnation, he was worthy of a divine calling. Matthew later used his skills with numbers and record-keeping to become the author of the first gospel, creating a detailed account that specifically highlighted how my coming fulfilled ancient prophecies. The very attention to detail that had made him successful as a tax collector became his gift to generations of believers. Matthew would tell you today, the ledgers that once recorded debts became the very pages on which I documented grace when I trusted my perspective was worth sharing. My precious one, do you see the pattern in these testimonies? Each person faced a moment of decision where they had to trust not just in me, but in themselves as vessels worthy of carrying divine purpose. Their backgrounds were diverse, fishermen and tax collectors, women with reproductive health issues and men with military authority, slaves and prostitutes. Yet each found that self-trust was the doorway through which transformation entered their lives. I call to you now with the same urgency with which I called to the disciples on the storm-tossed sea. Subscribe to this channel today, just as they awakened me in their moment of greatest fear. Subscribing ensures that you too can access divine wisdom when the waters of doubt rise around you. Press the subscription button as a modern-day Ebenezer stone, marking the place where you declared, "Thus far the Lord has helped me." Share this message with 12 others, one for each tribe of Israel, one for each disciple, creating a circle of transformation that extends beyond yourself. Comment below with the words, "I receive these testimonies of divine self-trust," as a declaration that you recognize your own story reflected in these ancient journeys of transformation. My beloved, these testimonies are not relics of a distant past, but mirrors reflecting the potential of your own journey. The same divine spark that ignited their courage burns within you, awaiting only the oxygen of your yes to burst into flame. My beloved child, knowing the principles of self-trust and hearing the testimonies of those who have walked this path are like receiving a map and stories from travelers who have gone before you. But now comes the moment when you must begin your own journey, step by deliberate step. I will guide you through practical measures that will transform self-trust from an abstract concept into a living reality within your heart. The first step on this sacred path is to recognize the voice of the enemy who has planted doubts in the garden of your mind. Just as Eve was approached by the serpent who questioned, "Did God really say?" You too have been visited by whispers that question your inherent worth and capability. These voices may sound like your own thoughts, but they are foreign invasions, tares sown among the wheat of your true identity. Begin each morning by saying aloud, "Get behind me, Satan, for today I will listen only to the voice of truth." This declaration establishes a boundary around your consciousness, creating sacred space where self-trust can take root. In the book of Joshua, I commanded my people to meditate on my word day and night, so that they might be careful to do everything written in it. Similarly, you must saturate your mind with truthful statements about who you are. Create a scroll of self-trust, a physical document where you write declarations of your value and capability. Include both scriptural truths and personal affirmations. I am fearfully and wonderfully made. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. My voice matters. My intuition is a divine gift. I am equipped for every good work I am called to do. Read from this scroll morning and evening, just as the ancient Hebrews recited the Shema as a daily practice. When David faced Goliath, he remembered his victories over the lion and the bear, using past successes to fuel present courage. Similarly, you must become the keeper of your own victories. Purchase a beautiful stone, smooth enough to hold comfortably in your palm, and keep it somewhere visible. Each time you honor your intuition, stand firm in a difficult conversation, or take action despite fear, hold this stone and silently acknowledge your courage. Over time, this stone becomes like those the Israelites placed at the Jordan River, a physical reminder of your growing capacity to trust yourself. The prophet Elijah, after his triumphant confrontation with the prophets of Baal, experienced a period of doubt and exhaustion so severe that he asked to die. I did not condemn his humanity, but instead sent an angel to provide food and rest before the next phase of his journey. Honor your need for physical support by establishing a Sabbath ritual, a time set apart from productivity and performance where you simply allow yourself to be. Whether for an hour, an afternoon, or a full day, this sacred pause reminds you that your worth is not in what you produce, but in whose image you are made. When Moses spoke with me, his face shone with reflected glory so brightly that he had to wear a veil among the people. You too must seek regular encounters with divine perspective through the practice of sacred visualization. Find a quiet place and close your eyes. Imagine yourself standing before me, seeing your reflection in my loving gaze. Ask me, "How do you see me?" Then be still and receive the images, words, or feelings that arise. Record these revelations in a journal dedicated to this purpose, creating a testimony of divine perspective that can counter moments of doubt. The women who discovered my empty tomb ran with both fear and joy to share the news of resurrection. These seemingly contradictory emotions often accompany acts of self-trust. Fear of the unknown coupled with joy at embracing your authentic voice. Honor this complexity by creating a daily courage practice. Identify one small action each day that stretches your self-trust. Sharing an opinion in a meeting, declining a request that doesn't honor your boundaries, creating something without seeking permission or validation. After each act, place your hand over your heart and silently acknowledge, "I am afraid, and I am joyful, and both are welcome here." Just as Noah sent out birds to test the conditions outside the ark, you must send out exploratory actions to test the waters of greater self-trust. Begin with low-risk situations where failure would have minimal consequences. Perhaps share a creative idea with a trusted friend before presenting it to a larger group. Maybe make a small decision based solely on your intuition, then observe the outcome. These exploratory actions build confidence incrementally, creating evidence that your inner guidance system is trustworthy. When Solomon built the temple, he followed divine blueprints with precise measurements. Similarly, you must create clear parameters for decisions to prevent overwhelm from undermining your self-trust. Establish a personal decision-making framework with questions such as, Does this choice align with my core values? What would I advise someone I love in this situation? How will I feel about this decision 1 year from now? What is the still, small voice within me saying beneath the noise of others' opinions? Having this framework prevents decision fatigue and creates consistency in honoring your inner wisdom. The Apostle Paul advised the early church to test everything, hold fast to what is good. This discernment applies equally to the voices within and around you. Create a council of trusted advisors, 3 to 5 individuals who have demonstrated wisdom, who want what is best for you, and who have no personal agenda in your decisions. When facing significant choices, consult this council not to abdicate your authority, but to gather diverse perspectives that can illuminate your own inner knowing. Notice which advice resonates with your spirit and which creates discord, using these responses as clues to your authentic path. Daniel maintained his practice of prayer 3 times daily, even when it was forbidden by royal decree. His consistency created a foundation of integrity that sustained him through interpretation of dreams, political intrigue, and even the lion's den. Establish a daily self-trust ritual that anchors you to your inner authority, regardless of external circumstances. This might be as simple as placing your hand on your heart each morning and saying, "I trust you," to yourself. Or it might involve lighting a candle, taking 3 conscious breaths, and asking, "What is true for me today?" before making any decisions. The power lies not in the complexity of the ritual, but in its consistent practice. In the early church, believers broke bread together in remembrance of my sacrifice. Create your own communion ritual that celebrates your covenant of trust with yourself. Prepare a simple meal or cup of tea with mindful attention. As you consume it, reflect on the ways you have honored your inner knowing since your last communion. Acknowledge moments when you broke this covenant through people-pleasing, self-diminishment, or ignoring your intuition. Then consciously renew your commitment to self-trust, saying, "Though I sometimes falter, I choose again to honor the divine wisdom placed within me. I call to you now with the same urgency with which I called to the sleeping virgins in the parable. Prepare your lamp of self-trust before it is required in darkness." Subscribe to this channel today as a declaration that you are committed to keeping your inner lamp filled with the oil of divine confidence. Press the subscription button as if trimming your wick for greater illumination. Share this message with 5 specific people who need to awaken to their own divine authority before the midnight hour of decision arrives in their lives. Comment below with the words, "I am preparing my lamp of self-trust," as a testimony that will inspire others to begin their own preparations. My precious one, these practical steps may seem simple, but do not underestimate their power. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. What begins as the smallest of actions grows into a canopy of confidence under which many will find shelter. Begin today with one small step on this sacred path of self-trust, and watch as your inner landscape transforms from wilderness to garden. My beloved child, having planted the seeds of practical steps in the soil of your daily life, I now offer you sacred exercises that will water these seeds until they grow into unshakable roots of self-trust. Just as I spent 40 days in the wilderness before beginning my public ministry, these exercises require time in the sacred space between intention and manifestation, the fertile void where transformation takes root. The first exercise I offer you is the Jericho practice of proclamation. For 6 days, the Israelites circled Jericho in silence, building anticipation for the moment when their voices would bring walls tumbling down. Similarly, I ask you to encircle the walls of self-doubt in your life with intentional silence. For 6 days, notice every thought that undermines your confidence, every internal voice that questions your worthiness. Do not fight these thoughts, simply observe them without judgment, as if watching clouds pass across the sky. On the 7th day, break your silence with a mighty proclamation. Stand before a mirror, look into your own eyes, and speak aloud the words that will cause your walls to crumble. I no longer bow to the idol of others' approval. I trust the voice of God within me. These walls no longer separate me from my divine inheritance of confidence. Repeat this exercise for 4 weeks, and you will find the walls that have imprisoned your authentic self beginning to weaken and fall. The second exercise is the Beatitude reflection. When I delivered the Sermon on the Mount, I redefined blessedness in ways that confounded conventional wisdom. The meek, the mourning, the merciful. These were not categories the world associated with blessing. In your journal, create your own beatitudes of self-trust. Blessed am I when I speak truth that others may not be ready to hear, for I honor the kingdom within me. Blessed am I when I follow my intuition against conventional wisdom, for I recognize the voice of the shepherd. Blessed am I when I make mistakes and continue forward, for I understand that growth requires falling and rising again. Write 3 new Beatitudes each week for a month, gradually building a new framework for understanding what it means to be blessed in your journey of self-trust. The third exercise is the manna meditation on sufficiency. The Israelites gathered exactly what they needed each day, no more, no less. Those who gathered more found it spoiled. Those who gathered less discovered it was enough. This perfect sufficiency offers a powerful metaphor for self-trust. Each morning, place your hands palm up on your lap and close your eyes. Breathe deeply, imagining that each inhale brings exactly the amount of confidence you need for this day. Not tomorrow's challenges or yesterday's regrets, but the precise measure required for the journey ahead. As you exhale, release the impulse to stockpile validation or success as security against future doubt. Whisper to yourself, "What I have within me is enough for today. Tomorrow will have its own provision." Practice this daily until you feel the subtle shift from scarcity to sufficiency in your relationship with your own inner resources. The fourth exercise is the Peter's step of progressive risk. When Peter walked on water, he learned that self-trust grows through incrementally challenging experiences. Create a ladder of self-trust with 7 rungs, each representing an action that requires slightly more confidence than the last. Perhaps the first rung is sharing an opinion with a trusted friend, while the 7th is presenting an original idea to a skeptical audience. Commit to climbing 1 rung each week, recording your experience after each step. What fears arose? How did you move through them? What surprised you about your own capacity? Like Peter, you may occasionally sink, but remember, I am always ready to extend my hand and lift you again to continue the journey. The 5th exercise is the Gethsemane practice of honest prayer. In my most vulnerable hour, I did not pretend courage I did not feel. I acknowledged my dread while still choosing alignment with divine purpose. Create a daily practice of honest prayer around self-trust, perhaps speaking these words. Divine presence within me, I confess the places where fear still overshadows trust. I acknowledge the cup of courage before me, and how I sometimes wish it would pass. Yet not my will of comfortable smallness, but your will of authentic greatness be done in me. Strengthen me to drink fully from this cup of my true potential. This prayer honors both your humanity and your divinity, creating space for transformation without shame. The 6th exercise is the Mary's Magnificat of self-honoring. When Mary received the divine announcement of her role in salvation history, she did not diminish herself or protest her unworthiness. Instead, she proclaimed, "My soul magnifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Savior, for he has looked with favor on the lowliness of his servant. Surely, from now on all generations will call me blessed." Create your own Magnificat that honors the divine seed planted within you. Begin each statement with "My soul magnifies," and complete it with acknowledgement of your gifts, your growth, your resilience, and your potential. My soul magnifies the wisdom that flows through me when I listen inward. My soul magnifies the courage that carries me through valleys of doubt. Recite your Magnificat weekly, adding new verses as you discover more facets of your divine design. The 7th exercise is the tabernacle construction of sacred space. The ancient Israelites created a portable sanctuary where divine presence dwelled in their midst as they journeyed through wilderness. Similarly, you must construct an inner sanctuary of self-trust that travels with you through changing circumstances. Find a physical object small enough to carry in your pocket or purse, a smooth stone, a special coin, a meaningful charm. Hold this object in your palm and close your eyes. Visualize filling it with memories of times when you trusted yourself and that trust was validated. Moments when your intuition proved correct, when your voice made a difference, when your boundaries protected what was precious. This object becomes your portable tabernacle, a physical reminder that divine wisdom dwells within you regardless of external circumstances. Touch it throughout your day, particularly before situations that challenge your confidence. The 8th exercise is the Job's restoration of self-perception. After losing everything, Job eventually received double what had been taken. But first, he had to confront and release distorted beliefs about himself and divine goodness. Identify 3 limiting beliefs that undermine your self-trust. I need others' validation to know I'm on the right path. Making mistakes proves I can't trust myself. If I were truly wise, I would never feel uncertain. For each belief, create a restoration statement that reflects a more expansive truth. I consult others' perspectives while honoring my own inner knowing. Mistakes are how wisdom is earned, not evidence of unworthiness. True wisdom includes embracing mystery and living certain questions patiently. Write these restoration statements on small cards and place them where you'll encounter them multiple times daily. On your bathroom mirror, by your computer, in your car. Like Job, allow your understanding of yourself to be restored to greater fullness than before your losses. The ninth exercise is the Ruth's gleaning of evidence. When Ruth followed Naomi to a strange land, she sustained them by gleaning grain from the edges of others' fields, gathering the overlooked abundance that others passed by. Similarly, begin gathering evidence of your trustworthiness that you've previously overlooked. Keep a small notebook dedicated solely to recording moments when you demonstrated good judgment, when your instincts served you well, when you made a difficult choice that you later knew was right. These might be significant life decisions or seemingly minor moments. Choosing to take an umbrella despite clear skies and being prepared when unexpected rain fell. Sensing that someone needed compassion rather than advice and seeing them respond with relief. The consistent practice of noticing and recording these moments creates a harvest of confidence that can sustain you through seasons of doubt. The 10th exercise is the Solomon's Temple of Discernment. When Solomon built the temple, he created different courts for different purposes, some for priests only, others for wider community. Similarly, you must develop clarity about which decisions in your life belong in which courts. In your journal, draw 3 concentric circles. In the innermost circle, list decisions that belong solely to you, where others' input is unnecessary and potentially confusing. In the middle circle, list areas where you make the final decision but might benefit from selected counsel. In the outer circle, list decisions that are genuinely collaborative, where shared wisdom is essential. This visual reminder helps you discern when to consult others and when to rely exclusively on your own wisdom, preventing both the isolation of excessive independence and the abdication of people-pleasing. The 11th exercise is the Ezekiel's vision of restoration. The prophet Ezekiel saw dry bones come to life through divine breath, a powerful metaphor for how self-trust can be resurrected in areas where past disappointments have left you feeling spiritually desiccated. Identify one specific area where your confidence has withered, perhaps creative expression, romantic relationships, career advancement, or spiritual practice. Create a 7-day resurrection ritual for this area. Each day, speak life into these dry bones through a specific action. Day 1. Research someone who excelled in this area despite setbacks. Day 2. Write a letter of forgiveness to yourself for past mistakes in this arena. Day 3. Take one small action that demonstrates renewed commitment. Continue creating specific actions for all 7 days. On the final day, write a prophecy over these bones, declaring how self-trust in this area will transform your future. I call to you now with the same urgency with which I beckon Lazarus from his tomb. Come forth from the grave of self-doubt by subscribing to this channel today. Just as Lazarus needed to hear my voice piercing through death's silence, you need consistent reminders that resurrection of your confidence is not only possible but promised. Press the subscription button as an act of faith that declares, I will not remain bound in grave clothes of hesitation and fear. Share this message with 10 others whose potential you see lying dormant, awaiting the commanding voice of truth to awaken it. Comment below with the words, I am practicing the exercises of divine self-trust as a public commitment to your own resurrection story. For what you declare before witnesses gains power that silent intentions cannot access. My precious one, these exercises are not merely spiritual practices, but sacred technology that will systematically dismantle the architecture of doubt in your life and rebuild the temple of confidence on foundations that cannot be shaken. Begin today, not with all 11, but with the one that calls most strongly to your spirit. For even the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, and the restoration of lifelong confidence begins with a single exercise practiced faithfully. My beloved child, as you continue on this sacred path toward unshakable self-trust, I wish to equip you with resources that will sustain you through seasons of growth and challenge. Just as the Israelites did not journey through the wilderness without the tabernacle, the ark, the cloud by day, and the fire by night, you too need sacred tools and companions for your pilgrimage. Let me share with you the treasures I have prepared for those who seek to trust the divine imprint I have placed within them. First among these resources is the ancient practice of scriptural meditation. not merely reading words, but allowing them to read you. Unlike the scrolls of human wisdom that change with passing fashions, my word remains an eternal anchor for your confidence. Begin with these passages that speak directly to your divine design. Psalm 139, which declares you are fearfully and wonderfully made. Jeremiah 1, where I reveal that I knew you before you were formed in the womb. Ephesians 2 verse 10, which proclaims you are my workmanship, created for good works prepared in advance. But do not approach these passages as you would ordinary text. Instead, practice the ancient monastic tradition of Lectio Divina. Read slowly until a phrase captures your attention, then close your eyes and repeat it silently until it descends from your mind into your heart. Allow these words to marinate in your consciousness, transforming from theoretical concepts into lived experience. The Israelites wore scripture in phylacteries bound to their foreheads and arms. Similarly, carry these words with you until they become so integrated with your identity that they arise naturally in moments of doubt. The second resource I offer you is the company of sacred companions who model divine self-trust. Just as Elijah felt alone in his stand for truth until I revealed 7,000 others who had not bowed to Baal, you need to discover those who walk the path of authentic confidence. Seek out 3 types of companions. First, historical mentors whose writings demonstrate unshakable inner authority. Perhaps Teresa of Avila, who reformed religious orders despite fierce opposition, or Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who trusted his moral compass even when the entire nation followed a different course. Second, contemporary models whose lives exemplify healthy self-trust balanced with humility. Not celebrities whose confidence often masks insecurity, but ordinary individuals who quietly trust their inner knowing while remaining open to growth. Finally, intentional companions with whom you can speak honestly about both your progress and struggles on this path. Meet regularly with these companions, either in person or through their written words, allowing their courage to catalyze your own. The third resource is the ancient practice of sacred silence. In a world that increasingly fears quietude, filling every moment with noise and distraction, silence has become a revolutionary act of self-trust. The prophet Elijah did not hear my voice in earthquake, wind, or fire, but in the sound of sheer silence that followed. Similarly, the deepest wisdom within you speaks not in shouts, but in whispers that can only be heard when external noise subsides. Begin with small periods of intentional silence. Perhaps 5 minutes each morning before the household awakens, or during your daily commute with devices turned off. Gradually extend these periods until you can comfortably dwell in silence for 30 minutes, noticing how your inner voice grows clearer and more trustworthy with regular listening. Remember Solomon's wisdom. The words of the wise are heard in quiet more than the shouting of a ruler among fools. Your own inner wisdom follows this same principle, speaking most clearly not in moments of frantic activity, but in cultivated stillness. The fourth resource is the transformative practice of grateful remembrance. When the Israelites crossed the Jordan River, I instructed Joshua to create a monument of 12 stones as a perpetual reminder of divine faithfulness. Similarly, you must build monuments to the moments when self-trust led to flourishing. Create a book of remembrance, a special journal where you record specific instances when you followed your inner guidance and discovered it was trustworthy. Perhaps you ended a relationship others thought was suitable but felt wrong to your spirit, and later understood why. Maybe you pursued an opportunity that seemed illogical, but aligned with your deepest knowing, which subsequently opened unexpected doors. Writing these experiences creates tangible evidence that counteracts doubt in moments of uncertainty. Review this journal regularly, especially before making significant decisions, allowing your own history of trustworthy intuition to strengthen your present confidence. The fifth resource is the powerful practice of embodied wisdom. Unlike the Greek philosophers who believed truth resided primarily in the mind, Hebrew understanding recognized that wisdom dwells in the entire being, including the body you inhabit. Your physical vessel often recognizes truth before your conscious mind can articulate it, registering alignment as peace and misalignment as tension. Develop the practice of regular body scans, particularly when facing important decisions. Sit quietly, close your eyes, and move your awareness systematically from your feet to your head, noticing sensations without judgment. Does a particular option create constriction in your throat, heaviness in your chest, or fluttering in your stomach? Does another bring relaxation to your shoulders, deepening of your breath, or warmth in your heart? The prophet Daniel remained physically healthy despite captivity in a foreign land, because he trusted his body's wisdom about what nourishment it needed. Similarly, your body offers constant feedback about which choices nourish your authentic self and which deplete it. Feedback that becomes increasingly reliable as you learn to interpret its subtle language. The sixth resource is the transformative power of sacred creativity. When King David danced before the Ark of the Covenant with abandoned joy, he demonstrated that self-expression is a divine birthright. Many who struggle with self-trust have disconnected from their creative voice, believing that practical matters deserve confidence while creative impulses should be questioned or suppressed. Yet creativity is not separate from divine wisdom, but one of its primary expressions. The very first attribute revealed about me in Scripture is that I create, and you, made in my image, are inherently creative. Whether through writing, music, movement, visual arts, or any medium that calls to your spirit, regular creative practice strengthens the muscle of trusting your unique voice. Begin with small, private expressions without concern for quality or audience. Perhaps write a poem each morning that no one else will read, or dance alone to music that moves your soul. These seemingly insignificant acts gradually restore your trust in personal expression, which then extends to greater life decisions. The seventh resource is the ancient wisdom of holy community. When I walked the earth, I gathered 12 disciples who journeyed alongside me. Not because I needed their approval, but because transformation happens most powerfully in the context of authentic relationship. Seek out or create a circle of truth-tellers who will neither flatter you with false praise nor diminish you with unwarranted criticism, but who will reflect back your essence with clear-eyed love. This might be a formal group that meets regularly for spiritual growth, or an informal collection of friends committed to genuine conversation. The early church described in Acts shared not just possessions but their authentic experience of transformation, encouraging one another daily. Similarly, your journey toward unshakable self-trust requires companions who will celebrate your growth, gently challenge your self-deception, and remind you of your divine design when you temporarily forget. Meet with these truth-tellers at least monthly, creating sacred space for honest conversation about your journey. The eighth resource is the liberating practice of Sabbath decision-making. In the creation story, I demonstrated the divine rhythm of action and rest, working for 6 days and pausing on the seventh to appreciate what had been created. Many decisions made from self-doubt rather than self-trust stem from the pressure of artificial urgency. Unless facing genuine emergency, adopt the practice of Sabbath consideration for important choices. After gathering necessary information, intentionally set the decision aside for a full day. During this Sabbath, engage in activities that nourish your spirit rather than actively thinking about the choice at hand. Often, clarity emerges not from more analysis, but from allowing your deeper wisdom to integrate all factors while your conscious mind rests. Moses ascended Mount Sinai for 40 days before receiving the tablets of the covenant. While few decisions require such extended contemplation, the principle remains. The most trustworthy guidance often emerges after intentional pause rather than during frantic deliberation. The ninth resource is the sacred practice of prophetic journaling. The prophets of old did not simply receive divine messages. They recorded them for generations to come, often in powerful symbolic language that bypassed ordinary thinking. Similarly, you can access deeper wisdom through stream of consciousness writing that suspends judgment and allows your authentic voice to emerge. Each morning, write 3 pages without stopping, editing, or concerning yourself with quality or coherence. Ask a specific question about which you seek guidance, then simply write whatever comes: images, fragments, memories, or seemingly unrelated thoughts. Often, profound wisdom emerges in unexpected forms, revealing perspectives your analytical mind could not access. The prophet Habakkuk was instructed to write the vision and make it plain upon tablets. Through regular prophetic journaling, you make plain the vision of your authentic path that has always existed within you, waiting to be articulated. The 10th resource is the transformative power of nature immersion. Throughout Scripture, significant revelations often occurred in natural settings. Moses at the burning bush, Elijah in the desert cave, my own 40 days in the wilderness. Creation speaks a language that bypasses intellectual defenses and awakens innate wisdom. Commit to regular periods of solitude in natural environments, whether forest, desert, mountain, or seashore. Begin with an hour weekly if possible, gradually extending to occasional half-day or full-day retreats. Go without devices, books, or companions, simply being present to creation and the Creator. Ask your question or concern, then open your senses fully to your surroundings, noticing what draws your attention. A particular stone, leaf pattern, or bird behavior may become a living parable that illuminates your path forward. Jesus frequently withdrew to mountains and gardens to pray, finding in these settings the clarity that renewed his sense of purpose. Nature offers you this same clarity, reflecting back divine wisdom through its myriad forms. The 11th resource is the ancient practice of dream incubation. Throughout Scripture, dreams served as vehicles of divine guidance. Think of Joseph, Daniel, and even Joseph, husband of Mary. Before modern lighting and constant stimulation, our ancestors recognized the wisdom available during sleep, when analytical thinking surrenders to deeper knowing. Before sleeping, write a specific question for which you seek guidance. Place this question under your pillow or nearby, then as you drift towards sleep, gently hold the intention to receive insight. Keep a journal and pen beside your bed to record dreams or thoughts upon waking, writing without censorship before fully alert. The ancient Hebrews believed that night was when the soul could most freely commune with divine wisdom. Even if you don't remember specific dreams, notice the intuitive clarity that often accompanies the first moments of waking. Solomon's greatest wisdom came when he was asleep, and yours too may arrive wrapped in the mystery of night. I call to you now with the same passionate longing with which I called to Jerusalem. Come under the shelter of my wisdom by subscribing to this channel today. Just as a mother hen gathers her chicks under her wings for protection and nourishment, these messages gather you under the wings of divine insight that will shelter you from the storms of doubt. Press the subscription button, not as a casual gesture, but as a solemn covenant that you will no longer wander exposed to the elements of confusion, but will dwell in the protected space of authentic wisdom. Share this message with 7 others who stand at crucial crossroads in their lives, where the choice between self-trust and self-doubt will determine the direction of their journey. Comment below with the words, "I am gathering divine resources for my journey of self-trust," as a public declaration that you are no longer content to travel unprepared, but are intentionally equipping yourself with sacred tools for transformation. My precious one, these resources are not mere suggestions, but essential provisions for your journey toward unshakable confidence in the divine design of your life. Just as I instructed Noah to prepare for coming waters by building an ark, I urge you to gather these resources before the inevitable storms of doubt arise. For when the rains of uncertainty fall and the floods of confusion rise, those who have built their lives upon the rock of authentic self-trust will stand firm, while those founded on the shifting sands of external validation will surely falter. The journey of Moses from doubt to divine confidence. My beloved child, throughout the sacred scrolls of Scripture, no journey more powerfully illustrates the transformation from self-doubt to divine confidence than that of Moses, my servant. His story is not merely history but prophecy, a living parable of the very path you now walk. Let us journey together through the wilderness of his doubt to the promised land of his unshakable trust, for in his footsteps you will recognize your own. Moses entered this world under the shadow of death. Pharaoh had decreed that every Hebrew boy should be cast into the Nile, yet through my divine orchestration and his mother's courage, the very waters meant to be his grave became his cradle. Even in this beginning, I whisper to you a truth. The circumstances that seem designed to drown your potential often become the very vessels that carry you toward your destiny. The waters of criticism, rejection, and misunderstanding that have threatened to overwhelm you are the same waters upon which I have set your basket, guiding you toward shores you cannot yet see. Though raised in Pharaoh's palace with every advantage of Egyptian education and privilege, Moses never lost the quiet knowing that he was different, that he belonged to a people groaning under oppression. This tension between his outward identity and his inner knowing created the fertile ground where authentic selfhood could eventually take root. Many of you live with similar tension, outwardly conforming to expectations in your families, workplaces, and social circles while inwardly sensing a different truth. This dissonance is not a flaw in your design, but the necessary friction that ultimately gives birth to genuine self-trust. When Moses witnessed an Egyptian beating a Hebrew slave, something awakened within him, a fire of justice that could no longer be contained. He acted impulsively, killing the Egyptian and hiding the body in the sand. This moment reveals the immature expression of inner knowing, action taken from authentic impulse, but without the wisdom that comes from seasoned self-trust. His response to injustice was right, but his method revealed that his confidence was still unrefined, still mingled with fear and rage. How often have you similarly acted on genuine intuition, but in ways clouded by emotion or lack of discernment? These moments are not failures, but necessary steps on the journey toward integrated wisdom. When his action was discovered, Moses fled to Midian, where he spent 40 years in the wilderness tending sheep, a dramatic demotion from Prince of Egypt to nomadic shepherd. During these decades of obscurity, far from the courts of power and influence, he learned the patient wisdom that can only be gained through silence, solitude, and surrender. The wilderness became his classroom, teaching him to navigate by stars rather than maps, to find water beneath seemingly barren ground, to distinguish between threats and shadows. This season of hiddenness was not punishment but preparation, not divine abandonment but divine apprenticeship. Many of you find yourselves in similar wilderness seasons, wondering if your gifts and passions have been forgotten, questioning whether your earlier sense of purpose was merely self-delusion. Take heart from Moses' story. The wilderness is not where dreams go to die, but where they are purified, stripped of ego and ambition until only authentic calling remains. The years that seem wasted in waiting are often the very years when the deepest roots of self-trust are forming beneath the surface of your awareness. It was in this wilderness, while tending his father-in-law's flocks on the backside of the mountain, that Moses encountered the burning bush, a common desert shrub made extraordinary by divine presence. Notice the setting of this pivotal revelation, not in temple or palace, but in the mundane landscape of daily work. Similarly, your most profound encounters with divine purpose often occur not in moments of spiritual ecstasy, but in the ordinary terrain of your everyday existence, while preparing a meal, driving to work, or walking in a familiar neighborhood. The burning bushes of revelation are everywhere for those with eyes to see and the courage to turn aside. When I called to him from the midst of the flame, Moses responded with simple availability. Here I am. These 3 words represent the foundation of all authentic self-trust. The willingness to be fully present to the moment, neither hiding in the past nor escaping to the future. Before any great undertaking, before any divine commission, this fundamental stance of availability must be established. Can you say with Moses, "Here I am," bringing your full, unedited self to this present moment? Not "Here is the self I wish to be," or "Here is the self others expect," but simply, "Here I am," with all my contradictions, questions, and capabilities. When I revealed my plan to send Moses back to Egypt to liberate his people, his immediate response was doubt. Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? This question reveals the core obstacle to self-trust, the fixation on personal inadequacy that blinds us to divine sufficiency. Notice that I did not answer his question by listing his qualifications or bolstering his ego. I simply said, "I will be with you." True self-trust is never self-reliance, but rather confidence in the divine presence that works through your unique vessel. Moses continued his objections. What if they do not believe me or listen to me? I am slow of speech and tongue. Please send someone else. Each protest revealed another layer of doubt, fear of rejection, awareness of limitations, reluctance to embrace his calling. Rather than condemning these doubts, I addressed each one specifically, providing signs, promising assistance with his speech, and eventually assigning Aaron as his spokesman. This patience with doubt offers a profound insight. Genuine self-trust is not the absence of questions, but the willingness to move forward even while questions remain. When Moses finally returned to Egypt, he faced repeated failures as Pharaoh hardened his heart and the people's suffering intensified. The path from initial calling to eventual liberation was not a straight line, but a labyrinth of setbacks, resistance, and apparent defeats. Yet with each obstacle, Moses' confidence deepened, not in his own abilities but in the divine purpose working through him. This is the paradoxical journey of authentic self-trust. As recognition of personal limitation increases, so does confidence in divine provision. The climactic moment of Moses' journey came at the Red Sea, with an army behind and an impassable barrier ahead. The people panicked, convinced they would die in the wilderness, but Moses declared with newfound authority, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." This proclamation reveals the mature fruit of self-trust, the capacity to stand unmoved in turmoil, to speak truth when all evidence suggests defeat, to recognize divine activity beneath the surface of impossible circumstances. When I instructed Moses to raise his staff over the waters, he did so without hesitation, no longer questioning his adequacy or seeking reassurance. The self-doubt that had once dominated his response to divine calling had been transformed into quiet confidence through years of walking intimately with me through triumphs and failures, miracles and disappointments. As the waters parted, creating a path where no path had existed, Moses led the people forward on dry ground between walls of water, a powerful image of what becomes possible when self-trust matures into its fullness. For 40 more years, Moses led a complaining, resistant people through wilderness toward promised land. He interceded when my anger would have consumed them, received my law on their behalf, and established structures of governance that would outlast his lifetime. Though he himself would not enter Canaan due to a moment of frustrated disobedience, his journey from stammering shepherd to confident liberator remains the archetypal path of transformation. Before his death, Moses gathered the people for final blessings and charges. The hesitant speaker who had once begged to be relieved of leadership now spoke with such authority that the sacred text records. Since then, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face. The ultimate fruit of his journey was intimate relationship, the capacity to stand before divine presence, as a man speaks with his friend. This is the highest expression of self-trust, to know yourself so thoroughly known by me that you can stand without pretense, without fear, in the full light of perfect love. My beloved, I share Moses' story not as distant inspiration, but as intimate invitation. The same voice that spoke from the burning bush now speaks from the fire kindled in your own heart. The same presence that parted sea waters now parts the waters of impossibility in your life. The same patient love that transformed a doubting shepherd into a confident liberator now works persistently within you, calling you beyond the familiar confines of your limitations into the uncharted territory of divine partnership. I call to you now with the same urgency with which I summoned Moses at Horeb. Turn aside from your busy path and subscribe to this channel today. Just as Moses removed his sandals to approach holy ground, remove the protective layers you have placed around your heart and step barefoot onto the holy ground of transformation. Press the subscription button as your burning bush moment, the decisive turning aside that marks the beginning of a new chapter in your journey from self-doubt to divine confidence. Share this message with 12 others, representing the 12 tribes whose liberation began with one man's courageous yes. Comment below with the words, "I am removing my sandals," as your public declaration that you recognize the ground of your life as holy and are prepared to receive the commission that has been waiting for your readiness. My precious one, Moses' story is your story. The doubts that plague you, the inadequacies you perceive, the reluctance you feel, all these were present in the one through whom I performed the greatest liberation in Israel's history. If I could transform a murderer on the run into the meekest man on earth, a tongue-tied shepherd into a spokesman for divine justice, how much more can I transform the doubts that currently bind you into the very pathway of your liberation? The wilderness before you is not your punishment, but your preparation. The burning bush awaits those with courage to turn aside from well-worn paths and enter the territory of divine encounter. Sealing your covenant with self-trust. My beloved child, we have journeyed together through the wilderness of doubt to the threshold of the promised land, that sacred territory where self-trust flows like milk and honey, nourishing every aspect of your existence. Like Joshua standing at the edge of Canaan, you now face a moment of decision that will determine whether you merely visit the landscape of confidence or claim it as your permanent dwelling place. I invite you now to seal your covenant with self-trust through deliberate action that transforms insight into lived experience. Remember how I instructed the Israelites at Mount Sinai. If you will indeed obey my voice and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all peoples. Similarly, the insights you have received through this message become your treasured possession only when embraced through obedience. Knowledge without application remains merely information, seeds scattered on the path rather than planted in fertile soil. The time has come to dig your hands into the earth of your daily existence and plant what you have learned. First, I invite you to publicly declare your commitment to this journey. Just as the Israelites responded to Joshua with one voice, "All that you have commanded us we will do, and wherever you send us we will go." Make your declaration in the comments below. Write the words, "I am embracing divine self-trust as my birthright," creating a testimony that will strengthen not only your resolve, but the courage of fellow travelers who read your words. There is power in proclamation, in bringing your intention from the hidden realm of thought into the visible realm of expression. Second, Become part of this community of transformation by subscribing to this channel. When the Israelites traveled through wilderness, they did not journey as isolated individuals, but as a covenant community with shared purpose and provision. Similarly, your path toward unshakable self-trust flourishes best within a community of fellow seekers who remind you of your divine design when temporary amnesia sets in. Press the subscription button, not as casual endorsement, but as sacred commitment to continued growth. Each new message becomes like manna for your journey, divine provision that arrives precisely when needed. Third, extend this blessing to others still wandering in the wilderness of self-doubt. When I multiplied loaves and fishes, I first broke the bread and gave it to disciples, who then distributed to the multitude. You have received this bread of encouragement. Now break it and share it with those who hunger for authentic confidence. Send this message to at least 7 people whose light you see dimmed by the shadow of doubt. Include a personal note, sharing how these teachings have illuminated your own path. As you give freely what you have freely received, you participate in the divine economy, where abundance multiplies through generous distribution. Fourth, begin immediately with the simplest practice of self-trust, the art of sacred listening. Tonight, before sleep claims your consciousness, place your hand over your heart and ask this question: what is one small step I can take tomorrow to honor my inner wisdom? Then wait in silence, neither forcing an answer nor dismissing what arises. The still, small voice that speaks may surprise you with its clarity, or whisper so softly you must lean in to hear. Whatever guidance emerges, commit to following it tomorrow, no matter how insignificant it might seem. Remember how Naaman initially rejected Elisha's simple instruction to wash in the Jordan 7 times, expecting something more dramatic. Don't overlook the power of small beginnings. The mighty oak that shelters hundreds began as a single acorn pushing through soil. Fifth, create a visible reminder of your commitment to this journey. When Jacob encountered divine presence at Bethel, he set up a stone pillar and poured oil on it, establishing a physical marker of spiritual covenant. Similarly, choose an object that will serve as your Ebenezer, your stone of remembrance. This might be a special piece of jewelry you wear daily, a small stone carried in your pocket, or an image placed where you will see it regularly. Each time you see or touch this object, silently repeat, "I trust the divine wisdom placed within me." This practice creates a bridge between occasional inspiration and consistent embodiment. Sixth, establish a specific time each week for reviewing your progress on this path. When the ancient Hebrews celebrated Passover, they not only commemorated historical liberation, but renewed their personal identification with that freedom. Similarly, set aside 30 minutes each week, perhaps Sunday evening or Monday morning, to reflect on moments when you honored your self-trust and instances when you abandoned it for external validation. Record these reflections in a dedicated journal, creating a personal scripture of transformation that documents your exodus from the Egypt of people-pleasing to the promised land of authentic confidence. Seventh, commit to one significant act of courageous self-trust within the next 7 days. When Peter stepped out of the boat onto stormy water, he demonstrated that faith requires not just mental assent, but physical movement. Identify something you have hesitated to do despite inner prompting. Perhaps initiating a difficult conversation, pursuing a creative project, establishing a necessary boundary, or making a decision that others might question. Take this step not with reckless abandonment, but with mindful intention, acknowledging both your fear and your determination to move beyond it. After taking this action, regardless of outcome, celebrate your courage rather than fixating on results. The primary victory lies not in external success, but in honoring your inner authority. Remember the parable of the talents, how the master entrusted resources to his servants before traveling to a far country. To one he gave 5 talents, to another 2, and to another 1, each according to his ability. The first 2 servants immediately put their talents to work, doubling their value, while the third buried his single talent in the ground out of fear. When the master returned, he celebrated the initiative of the first 2, while condemning the fear-based inaction of the third. This parable speaks directly to the stewardship of self-trust. The divine confidence I have placed within you is not meant to be preserved through cautious inaction, but multiplied through courageous expression. Each time you honor your inner wisdom through action, you increase your capacity for greater trust in the future. I call you now to make your decision, as I once called to the Israelites through Joshua. Choose this day whom you will serve. Will you continue serving the false gods of external validation and people-pleasing, Or will you enter covenant with your authentic self, guided by divine wisdom? This choice faces you not once but daily, in moments large and small. Each time you stand at this crossroads, remember that I have designed you for freedom, not the shallow autonomy of doing whatever momentary desire suggests, but the profound liberty of living from your divine center rather than your conditioned periphery. Like the father in the parable of the prodigal son, I watch expectantly for your return to yourself. For the moment when you arise from the far country of doubt and begin the journey home to the confidence that is your birthright. I have already prepared the robe of authority to place upon your shoulders, the ring of belonging to grace your finger, and the feast of celebration to welcome your homecoming. The inheritance of unshakable self-trust has always been yours. It awaits only your willingness to claim it. I stand with arms extended, like Moses on the mountain, supporting you through every battle against the Amalekites of self-doubt. But unlike Moses, whose arms grew weary and required support, my strength never falters and my commitment never wavers. From the foundations of the earth, I have purposed your flourishing. From the beginning of time, I have prepared good works for you to walk in. From the moment of your conception, I have equipped you with every spiritual gift needed for your unique calling. Trust this truth not because external voices confirm it, but because your deepest knowing resonates with its melody. My beloved, the journey we have shared through this message is not ending, but merely beginning. The seeds planted today will continue growing long after these words fade from your screen. Nurture them with the water of consistent practice and the sunlight of community. Watch how they transform, over time, from fragile sprouts of possibility into mighty trees of confidence whose fruit nourishes not only your life, but the lives of all who shelter in your presence. I leave you with this blessing, like the one Aaron pronounced over the Israelites. May divine confidence illuminate your path. May self-trust become your native language. May you walk in the authority of your authentic voice. And may you always remember that the wisdom you seek is not distant but dwelling within you, waiting only for your courageous yes to manifest in all its power and beauty. The divine transformation of self-trust. My beloved child, we stand now at the sacred threshold between message and manifestation, between hearing and becoming. What I have shared with you today is not merely information but invitation, a divine summons to step into the fullness of who I created you to be from before time began. This is the moment where words must transform into flesh, where understanding must become embodiment, where the seed of truth must be planted in the soil of your daily existence. Remember the dramatic moment when I called Lazarus from his tomb? For 4 days he had lain wrapped in grave clothes, bound by the finality of death, until my voice penetrated the darkness with 3 simple words. Come forth, Lazarus. Similarly, I call to you now to come forth from the tomb of self-doubt where you have been buried, not for days but perhaps for years or even decades. The grave clothes of fear, people-pleasing, and hesitation have kept you bound, preventing the full expression of your divine design. Today is your resurrection day. The stone has been rolled away. Light streams into darkness. My voice echoes in the chambers of your heart. Come forth. When the Israelites prepared to enter the promised land, I spoke through Joshua, saying, I have set before you life and death, blessing and curse. Therefore choose life, that you and your offspring might live. This same choice stands before you now. The path of self-doubt leads to the slow death of your potential, the gradual dimming of your light, the quiet surrender of your divine calling. The path of self-trust leads to abundant life, to the full expression of your gifts, the courageous pursuit of your purpose, and the profound peace that comes from alignment with your authentic nature. Choose life. Not tomorrow, not when you feel more ready, not when circumstances align perfectly, but today, in this very moment of decision. The prophet Elijah, after his triumphant confrontation with the prophets of Baal, heard my still, small voice asking, What are you doing here? I ask you the same question now. What are you doing in the cave of limitation when mountains of possibility await your footsteps? What are you doing hiding your light when a world in darkness desperately needs your illumination? What are you doing burying your talents when the divine economy depends on your generous investment? The time for hesitation has passed. The season for preparation is complete. Now is the moment to rise and shine with the radiance of unshakable self-trust. When Solomon dedicated the temple, fire fell from heaven, and my glory filled the sanctuary so powerfully that the priests could not stand to minister. That same glory stands ready to fill the temple of your being when you dedicate yourself fully to this covenant of self-trust. No longer will you serve the false gods of external validation, or sacrifice your authentic voice on the altars of others' expectations. From this day forward, you will worship in spirit and in truth, the spirit of divine confidence and the truth of your inherent worthiness. I do not promise that this path will be without challenges. When the Israelites claimed their promised territory, they still faced battles for possession. Similarly, you will encounter resistance both from within and without as you claim the territory of self-trust. Old patterns will attempt to reassert themselves. Well-meaning voices may question your newfound authority. The temptation to return to familiar bondage may arise in moments of uncertainty. Yet I assure you with the same promise I gave to Joshua: be strong and courageous. Do not be frightened, and do not be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go. The words I spoke to Jeremiah before his birth echo across time to you now. Before I formed you in the womb I knew you, and before you were born I consecrated you. Your divine design is no accident, no cosmic afterthought. Your unique combination of gifts, perspectives, experiences, and even wounds was meticulously crafted for a purpose that only you can fulfill. When you trust yourself, you trust the potter whose hands shaped you. When you honor your authentic voice, you honor the breath that gave you life. When you stand in your authority, you stand in the image of divine confidence that has been your inheritance from the beginning. Let this day be remembered as your personal Passover, the decisive moment when you crossed over from slavery to freedom, from hesitation to determination, from doubt to unshakable trust. Like the Israelites who marked their doorposts with blood as a sign of their covenant, mark this moment with a deliberate act of commitment. Subscribe to this channel right now as your declaration of allegiance to the kingdom of authentic confidence within you. Every future message becomes another stone in the altar of remembrance you are building, a testimony to your journey from bondage to blessing. Share this message immediately with 21 others who remain captive to the Pharaoh of self-doubt. Your act of sharing becomes like Moses' staff stretched over the Red Sea, creating a path of possibility where others previously saw only impassable barriers. Include your personal testimony of how these words have struck the rock of your heart, causing living waters of confidence to begin flowing in your desert places. Declare in the comments below: today I cross over into the promised land of divine self-trust. This public profession creates an unbreakable covenant between your present declaration and your future manifestation. Just as the high priest carried the names of the 12 tribes over his heart when entering the Holy of Holies, I carry your declaration before the throne of heaven, where it becomes an eternal reminder of this pivotal moment in your journey. Begin this very day to live from the inside out. Before making any decision, whether seemingly insignificant or life-altering, pause and place your hand over your heart, asking, what do I know to be true here? Then honor that knowing above all external voices, remembering that the kingdom of heaven is within you. This simple practice, repeated consistently, will transform self-trust from abstract concept to embodied reality more powerfully than 1,000 inspirational messages. My precious child, as we conclude this sacred time together, I leave you with the blessing I once gave to my disciples before ascending. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. The peace that surpasses understanding becomes your constant companion when you finally come home to yourself. When you recognize that the voice you have been seeking in countless external sources has been speaking within you all along, waiting only for the quietness of surrender and the courage of trust. The greatest act of faith is not believing in a distant deity, but trusting the divine spark placed within you. The most profound worship is not performed in temples made with hands, but in the sanctuary of authentic living. The highest form of obedience is not blind adherence to external rules, but magnetic alignment with your true nature, the image of God uniquely expressed through your particular being. Go now into the world transformed, not by the renewing of external circumstances, but by the renewing of your mind regarding who you truly are and have always been. Walk not as one seeking identity, but as one who has found it. Speak not as one borrowing authority, but as one embodying it. Live not as one hoping for worthiness, but as one radiating it. For you are my beloved child, in whom I am well pleased, not for what you achieve, but for who you are in your essence. The door to the life you have longed for has always been unlocked. Today, you have finally received the courage to push it open and step through. All of heaven celebrates this moment of your liberation. All of creation awaits the full expression of your authentic glory. All of eternity has prepared for the unfolding of your divine purpose, which can only manifest through the portal of unshakable self-trust. Rise now. Walk forward. Never look back. Your transformation begins today.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the